Good afternoon, everyone. It's a beautiful afternoon. A skeeter bite on my eyeball. That hurts. But it has been a beautiful day. Welcome to another episode of the All Night Show, where we get down into the itty gritty of this. We get down into the nitty gritty of this itty bitty thing we call life. I won't edit that out. I don't edit any of my videos. I like for y'all to see that I'm a human. I make mistakes. Hopefully one day I'll get to start doing these videos live when I have an audience that wants to see it live. But today on the All Night Show, I gave a little teaser on social earlier. Kind of what the topic was going to be. And it was, how do we fight this war? Well, the more I've boiled over this today, I have now changed that to WaRevolution. I made up a new word. Yeah, I can do that if I want to. Because I see it in a couple different lights. But before we get into the topic, I wanted to, where I'm at right now is a very special place to me. It's a very special place to my family and other families that are local to this area. And there's a lot of history where I'm sitting right now. And I actually had planned to do this episode somewhere else, my favorite place on the property. But it actually turned out that the skeeters were so bad in the swamp that even with all protection on, you just couldn't stand it. I mean, I got wounds to prove it. So we're back out here and liable to start getting eat up as the sun's steadily setting back there. They come out like zombies. The vampires come out at night. That's what they are. The bloodsuckers. They come out at night, tear you up. So as the shade comes, they'll come. But anyways, where I'm sitting is what I've always been told to be one of the oldest grave sites. I know in Jones County, but I've heard in Mississippi as well. I don't know if that's true. But anyways, this is that place, and just went, I think in 2007, a couple of the families, mine included, went together and got this monument put here. And I'll share a photo with what it says on it. It has a couple of different family names on it, and it's the Knights, the Elseys, and the Welches, and the date is 1820 to that monument was set there in 2007, and it has the number 22 above that, those three family names. And what that number 22 represents is there's 22 unmarked graves on this small hillside, and the reason this place is so special, the reason, if I was to zoom out and show you everything around here, it has grown up here, but this estate gets cut, I think by the Welches at least once every couple of weeks, and gets maintained. There's a couple different people, I think, that volunteer to come out here and clean it up, just because it does have a lot of meaning to the local families, because 22 unmarked graves, and I'm sure if I dug hard enough, I could probably come up with some of the names that are here. But I've also heard that there, some of those graves are probably slaves, and even older graves here could be from some of the Indian tribes. I don't know if that's true. That's speculation, I think. But it's 22 families, or 22 members of three different families that moved here. That's what, 1776, let's just round up 1780. That's 40 years after we won our independence from England. And that's not that long. I'm almost 40 now, and I used to think that I couldn't wait to get old, but as we all know, as we start to age, you kind of wish that you could slow time down. I think, that's all perspective, and the way that you view the world, you actually can slow down time for yourself. But 40 years after the war, we won our independence. Those families were gifted this. They actually came here before 1820. I think probably around the turn of that century they started showing up in these parts. But this was their homestead. That war was fought, in my opinion, because it was the first time that people that had lived for centuries, if not millennia, under the rule of kings and queens, whether they were good kings and queens or not, they were still under their rule. They were never really allowed to own their own personal property. And whenever the good kings and queens started sending ships this way, and we discovered this land, a lot of bad things took place, and a lot of native cultures were displaced from this land. But the reason we fought that war and fought so hard to retain what we had started in this country, in my opinion, was because of the first time in so long that the common man could come, put his foot on a piece of earth, call it his own, and live that natural, in touch with your surroundings life that I talk about a lot. We are nature. But they would come, they were granted this land, and they made that journey. You got to think about all those years ago. There was nothing here yet. The South was just now being born. This was almost 40 years before the Civil War, so it's kind of weird. It was right there in that middle point. And from what I understand, a lot of these families that lived and formed out here, they were not, big plantation owners. I think some of them might have had their fair share of actual slaves, but from what I've read in my research, a lot of them were treated like family because they were there every day doing the same things. They were just basically existing in this place that had never, other than the native tribes, our way of life. And that, I know that is not our way of life like it is today, but the Western society way of life back then had never existed here. So they were having to form that, and they probably done a lot of things wrong, and there was probably some division among the people, but for the most part, I guarantee you they got along. And whenever someone needed help around you, you helped them, because that's all you had to depend on. You couldn't get on these things and communicate with thousands, millions of people around the world instantly. No, you had who was around you. And I say all that to say that, when I come to this, I don't mean to brag or to be prideful. I mean that I've always felt so grateful that I have had the opportunity to grow up on land that's legit been in my family, for 200 plus years now. And that to me has always blown my mind. And I've wrote a couple of blog posts about how it feels for me to walk through these woods whenever, and I may get emotional trying to talk about this, but whenever I walk through these woods, it's almost like I'm walking in the footsteps of, some of those past ancestors who, in my short little life, especially since I've started looking into alternative sources of information, I have seen how apparent the controlling mechanisms of society are out there, and I can only imagine what it was like, how treacherous the journey was to travel here, but the simple fact to know that you were on your own, yes, that was kind of scary, but also you had the peace of mind of knowing that there was nobody that could really mess with you. You were going to be left alone for the most part, and what you worked for, you were going to get to keep, and that, to me, in my honest opinion, is how it should be. I think that, we don't hurt people, and we don't take their things, and what you work for should be yours. And so, I know that's a big lead up to all this, but it's kind of ironic that we fought for our freedom from control of a lot of aspects of our life, all those years ago. And now, in my opinion, we face it again. That's why I call it the WaRevolution. Because I don't think that this has to be a traditional war, and I don't think that it will be a traditional war. And I believe we're in the revolution right now. I believe that it's happening, and I think that anybody who's honest with themselves can see that it's happening. Whenever you have, like I've said times before, whenever you have very accredited, very well-respected individuals in their fields, experts in their fields, that are speaking their true expert opinion, and it goes against said narrative that supports whoever it supports. I'm not even going to pretend like I know, because I don't know, but there's corruption out there, and everybody knows that there's corruption out there. But yet, whenever it comes down to certain aspects, oh well, what are we supposed to do? We gotta have the politicians, we gotta have the left-right democracy dichotomy. No, we don't. There's got to be more choices than that, guys. There's got to be more ways to do this than the way that we've done it for all these years. Yes, it was beautiful when we started it, but that system that was created then has long been gone from existence. It's not even anywhere close to what it used to be. And if that triggers you and that makes you think that I'm wrong, well, then we could talk about it, but I beg you to actually read some information about our history as a country that comes from outside of a public school system like I was taught in public school, which serves the purpose to make you think that the United States is the greatest country in the world, which I don't disagree with in most aspects. But that serves a purpose. You would want your young individuals, your young minds, to come out into the world and to think that their country's the greatest. So if some of those young individuals join your military, then they're not going to question the authority of that military, because they were trained for so many years to not question the authority of their public school system leaders. But I can ramble on that all day long, and I don't mean this to be a scary episode. I mean this to be a productive episode and filled with some solutions. So I think that we're in the WaRevolution right now. I think it's happening. I think there's signs out there, and I think if you look for them, you'll see them. But if you hadn't seen them by now, you might not ever see them. I'll just be honest about that. It's kind of hard not to see some of the corruption that's out there right now. So I vote that we start doing things like I have been doing to exit that as much as possible. I still have a regular day job, work for an employer, but we can do things now in this modern age to further separate ourselves from the state and its systems, and become more independent like we fought for in the beginning. We still have that opportunity in this country, and I think we can do it very peacefully. I know there's been violence already, and there's more than likely going to be more violence to come, but I hope to spread a message that we don't have to actually fight with bullets and knives. And anybody that knows me knows that I love bullets and knives. I always have and I always will, but that should be the last resort when we have new things, new technology now that allows us to make them not exist anymore if we all start using them. So we'll start um with land, because land's pretty broad. I mean, that's why I gave that whole spiel on being right here, because I think it's our most precious resource that we have completely just started to crap on in this nation. You know, yes, this is pretty to be nice and kept cut so that we can appreciate this burial site, but why does every American have to cut their grass once a week for, in this part of the world, like 8 months of the year? I mean, our ancestors fought and died to have the ability to grow their own food and make their own way on a piece of land. And now, you know, I grew up asking why we didn't do those things anymore, and I was always told because it was cheaper to not do them. And that just makes zero sense to me now that I know what you're buying when you go to the grocery store. So the price of my personal health and the price of my family's health, you can't really set a limit on that. Yeah, I can only afford to buy certain things if I go out into the, modern society and want to pay for a meal. There's only so far that my status will allow me to afford. But with a piece of land, I can have the most high quality food all the time around me at all times. And in some parts of the world, like here, you can legit grow something all year long. Plus, you can have animals all year long. And it makes no sense to me that poverty is so prevalent in this part of the world. If you ride through the South, poverty is stricken, and it's not just black, it's, white, Mexican, it's just poverty in general. You have your pockets of wealth, but it's a lot of poverty, just like in the rest of the world. And a lot of that's because you got churned through that system and you come out expecting that everything was still just going to be taken care of it for you. And that system, over the generations, in my opinion, made us forget why our ancestors fought and died for this natural resource, the most precious natural resource that man has ever had. It's right here. I'm sitting on it. My feet are on it. I mean, there's beautiful cedar trees growing from it. And that, imagine the money that could come out of that tree with someone who had the time and the ability to become an expert in woodworking and to make a work of art out of that lumber. I mean, I don't know how I got on the tree, but I think I was talking about the price of my health. That's pretty pricey too. But we have forgotten about that in this country, and I think that is one of the easiest things, especially in the South where land is cheap. There's a lot of it out here, and a lot of people just do nothing with it. It grows grass. If anything, it grows grass and maybe some pine trees. And I'm not saying that there aren't people out in this part of the world that are doing great things with their land, but for just like everywhere else in the United States, the average lawn is kept cut to, a quarter of an inch or shorter all year long, and there can't be any life that exist in the lawn, especially any life that might, try to bite you or stick you or anything like that. It can't be any of those things. But then we don't do anything with it. Like, I don't ever see anybody just like, I need to stop saying like, I don't see anybody out there just laying out in their lawns on Saturday evening after they got done cutting it. There's nobody ever out there. They're either inside or they're not home. So who are you cutting the lawn for? But I digress. So land is connected to food, is connected to your security. I mean, I feel pretty secure sitting right here. Those of you that may know where I'm sitting, this has always been a place that I felt like if things really got bad, I might have to retreat to. And I feel like my chances are pretty good. But that's not the initial plan, and I don't think that it has to get that bad. I do think it's going to get a lot worse, especially on the food front, if you don't start growing some of it for yourself, or at least start forming relationships with people that you can trade a skill or a product to for food that are growing it for you. But not only is it connected to food and your security and whatnot, but it's also connected to community. And having the people around you, like, locally that you can depend on. Plus, in this day and age, you can have that virtual community online that, in the case of worst case scenario, if they needed a place to come to, they know you exist. And they know that you have a community of like-minded individuals around you. And if they needed to get out of town, they could come to you, vice versa. But also, the way I see the bifurcation happening, especially with the vaccine mandates coming out, is you're going to have completely normal people that want to just continue to live their life. They don't think about any of the crazy stuff that I talk about, but they just want to exist, and they're not getting experimental gene therapy shot into their arms. They're just not going to do it, regardless of how many times you threaten them. They're going to figure out a way to exist elsewhere, and you'll start seeing these little networks pop up, and virtually, I have my little local community. I'm trying to build stronger and stronger, but then I'll be able to reach out to some of these other communities that I've started talking to virtually, that think, they might have completely different things going on and might live in completely different climates, but they kind of all agree on you don't hurt people and you don't take their things. It's kind of a big commonality between all the communities. So you can reach out to them, and in the event that they really do start cracking down on trade and telling you can't go to the grocery store if you need to do that, or you can't come in the city limits because you haven't been cleared by the monitoring system that's set up at the city limit sign that takes a picture of you when you drive in, or your cell phone, it beeps off your cell phone and you're one of the unvaccinated. You're not allowed to come in city limits. I don't think it'll get that crazy. I'm just giving you crazy scenarios, but it could happen. You're not allowed in. Well, I want to still do commerce. That's what makes this whole social life thing so cool, is we get to find value in other human beings and what they do and what they commit their life to. And just because I didn't want to commit my life to that don't mean that I don't think that's cool and might not want to buy it from you or trade you something for it. You know what I'm saying? So community is very, very important right now. We've got to start having these kind of deep conversations with the people around us and the people that we talk to on a regular basis right here on these devices. We got to start having real conversations and knowing where people stand, because you got to have a line. If you continue to just allow, well, I'll just do this and then next time we'll stand up and we'll fight them next time, eventually you get to a point where there's not a way to go back because you've been so far down the trail. There's trees and stuff falling behind you, and it's just not, there's no way that you can fight your way back through that mess. So start having those conversations with the people around you. The next thing I want to hit on, and I'll try to go quicker through these two. Land is very important, and community is very important. But money, our way of doing that commerce between individuals, we got to start thinking about that differently. If you would have told our ancestors who fought for this land, I'm going to keep referring to that, if you would have told them all those years ago that you would rely on some worthless paper money, that whenever you take your money, they probably had some banks, but when you took your money to the bank, or your gold or silver or whatever it was, to the bank for them to hold for you, and they paid you good for it back then, if you put it in savings and whatnot. Whenever, if you told them that they could then turn around, well, first off, that paper money would not be backed by anything other than faith. And debt is backed by like a lot of debt, not just a little bit of debt, but a lot of zeros. But whenever you took some of your money and deposited it in the so-called bank for them to hold it for you because it was safer to keep your money there, they could then turn around and tenfold that money and loan it out to, however many other people, and whenever they done that, they'd be able to do it again, and it would just be this big spider web of fake money that come off the money you worked hard for, and you thought that you were doing the right thing by putting it into the system that was created for you. I don't know if it was created for you. Well, it's just not the case anymore that putting your money there benefits you. I mean, anybody that's wealthy that might be listening to this should know that it actually costs you way more money to if you have large sums of cash. Nobody wants that because it costs too much money to store it. The bank charges you at a certain amount to start storing large sums of money. But we have a thing called crypto now that a lot of people were scared of, but it was literally, in my last video, I think I explained that pretty good. It was created for the people, just like, we was hoping that the American dollar was created to serve the free country of the world. It wasn't. It was created by someone to continue the greedy control of humanity. But crypto was set up digitally as a way to make that avoidable so that it couldn't happen again with that technology. And there's lots of other systems out there now that are doing great things. And I almost beg you at this point to consider to start to look into, in my opinion, Bitcoin is going to be the digital currency of the future. We'll have our little Fed coin or whatever the Federal Reserve comes up with in the next decade, half a decade. It might liable to be sooner than that. But the governments are adopting crypto. The news is out there. If you want to see these things, you can find them too. So they'll have their own digital currency that they'll use for anyone who's continuing to go along with their nonsense. Whenever they're good boys and girls, they'll get incentivized and they won't have to do anything, and they'll have their UBI check that'll get deposited to their digital wallet. But if they're bad and they get caught sneezing in public without a mask on, they might just cut you out a couple $100 that month, and you just gotta deal with it because that's just how it's gonna be. But the good thing about it is free people of the world built blockchain technology, and that's what crypto's based on or built on. And whenever you threaten, whenever you pressure an organism, it mutates just like a virus. We're an organism. We're made up of lots of organisms, but we were combined as a human organ. I mean, we exist here, biological life. So whenever you pressure us, as the free people of the world are still out there, we adapt, we create, we find ways around it. And when you start regulating, you regulating things 12 years later that was created, all those years ago. You're just now starting to try to regulate those things. And we all know how fast technology advances. I remember listening to CDs in a CD player like a decade and a half ago. And now I really don't even know where any of my CDs are. And I used to say that I would keep them forever. And it just don't make no sense because this stuff advances so quickly. And now I can have all that stored in one little spot. And then I can have copies of it backed up places. And all of that was built by free people. That was not built by the government. The government started using it. That's what always happens. We come up with something great. They see that it's successful and that it might be threatening to their existence, because this is threatening to their existence. It's threatening to everything that they are. They have to co-opt it and start using it for themselves. And that's what you'll start to see happen. But in order to do commerce with one another, it don't have to be just crypto, or it doesn't have to be just silver or gold. I'm all for precious metals and whatnot, and any kind of valuable asset that is liquid during hard times. Another reason why I like guns and ammo, because in hard times, you read in history, people are looking for guns and ammo. I bet people in Australia would pay a lot for some guns and ammo right now. But, any kind of precious asset. And then skills. If you have some sort of skill, I'm a field technician, and people ask me exactly what do I call myself, what do I work on? Well, it's a broad thing, and I think the word technician explains it pretty good, because it's a mindset, and I've applied that to the rest of my life, and that's where I started discovering a lot of these things that I talk about, is because it just seems like the better way to troubleshoot and to do things, to troubleshoot this nitty-gritty, itty-bitty thing we call life. But acquire some of those skills. If you don't have any hard skills, woodworking, mechanical skills, welding, gardening, cooking, canning, knitting, the things that humans need whenever you can't just go buy it or pay somebody else to do it for you anymore. Start learning a couple of those skills. It's fun. It really is actually kind of fun to start learning some of those things. It makes you feel like you're worth something without having to go spend money, if that makes any sense, if that clicks in any heads out there. But yeah, you gotta start learning some of those skills. And the last thing, and I think this one's, kind of applies to everything, but we all spend a lot of time right here on these devices. And I don't think we realize how much corruption is pushed through these devices. Even the ones that are aware, for myself, for instance, I catch myself being caught up in the moment by things that I see here, and I have to step back for a minute and reevaluate my situation. But once again, those free people of the world, and it's not me, I'm not smart enough, I'm trying to learn some of this stuff, but they're focusing on ways to keep your digital identity, because you have a digital identity whether you want to accept it and control it or not. Most people don't. They allow other people to control it. There's people out there that are creating devices and systems to make it simple for you to do that. For instance, Start9, I heard about this on a podcast the other day. They took the whole, the server game, like all this information goes and bounces off the main servers, Google, Amazon, all those big servers out there, and that's how they collect all your data and send you the ads in the middle of the night that you woke up from a dream, that you just seen the item in your dream, and you look at your phone and there it is on your phone. I don't know how it works, but they're pretty good at it, and that's how they get all that information. Is everything that you do right here transmit through their servers. Start9 is a company of young entrepreneurs, really smart guys that have taken that server complex and turned it into the personal computer, basically. Made it that simple where the average person can order one of these devices, which are kind of expensive right now, about half a grand, something like that, depending on which one you want to get. But it's plug and play, and then any electronic device, you can even share it with your family. I don't know how far you would want to go with that. Your immediate family, I think, would be definitely okay, but don't just start giving it out to all your friends and neighbors. But and I haven't received mine yet. I do have one coming, but I haven't received it yet. But it's plug and play, and you follow the instructions, and then any device you own that you're gonna search the internet with, you can connect to this product, and it puts you on your own server. So all your data stays right there where it is. And these are the technologies that are happening to allow us to continue to be free and liberated individuals rather than, in my opinion, we've been slaves for about 100 years, but some of us are waking up and we want that back. We want that freedom to be just left alone back. We don't want to hurt people. I don't know of anybody that truly wants to go out and start shooting at other people that I have no idea what their personal feelings are, other than they agreed to pick up a rifle or a stick or something for the other clan leader. I'm not in that clan stuff no more with what they've created. If you want to start forming clans of small local groups or virtual networks that like-minded individuals where I can actually come in and we can actually talk and commute with one another, yeah, I'm all about that. But existing in this system of 350, 500, I don't know, so many million people now in this country that is clearly divided, and it's clearly just causing so much more nonsense to happen that doesn't need to happen. I'm gonna try to start telling people that there's other ways of doing things. So Start9, that's a really cool product, and that digital security and privacy, you gotta start thinking about it. It's not that hard, if you want to do as little as you hear about it all the time, like ExpressVPN. I don't know if I recommend that. I would recommend a product from this next thing I'm going to talk about, but that's a mainstream way. It's easy to use. You just set it up, and then you have your own little virtual private network that's decentralized, and it's pinging your IPS address, I think that's right, off of multiple servers around. I think you can go around the world, yeah, because you can change it to where you can watch, what's being played on BBC network in Europe, here in the United States, where you probably wasn't going to be able to see that here unless you paid for a special subscription service. So even if you want to do something as simple as the VPN, I think that's a step in the right direction, and that's all I'm talking about. Let's put one step in front of the other, just like it was when you was a kid, or just like any struggle you've ever been through in your life. It's gonna be uncomfortable, but most of the time, the feeling. If you work through that struggle and you come out on the other side, you feel so much better than to just give up and not do anything about it. And I don't think we can give up and just allow this to keep happening. We got to start making steps. Like I said, don't want to go out there and start shooting bullets at other people. I want to do this the easiest, most peaceful way as possible. And if we get 40% of the country to start doing these kind of things, they ain't got no choice but to start leaving some of us alone. And it's growing. This kind of stuff is happening a lot more in less developed countries because they realize how powerful it is, especially with the crypto. Central and South America's blowing up. Ukraine's just released that they've legalized, I think 2022, where they'll be able to acquire crypto as an asset for their nation. mean, this stuff is coming, it's there, so you can either ride the wave or you can get crushed by the wave. And the last thing I want to talk about is the Blockchain Privacy Security Adoption Alliance, BPSAA. That's an alliance of several different projects. Pirate Chain is one of those. Komodo's in there. There's several different ones. Sentinel is the thing that I was talking about earlier. It is a true decentralized virtual private network system that allows you to set up your own VPN node, and these may be the wrong terminology, so excuse me if I'm wrong. I'm still learning on a lot of these computer terms, but it allows you to have the ability to have that set up in your home. You can use it as a VPN user, but you can also be a VPN provider, and so people can bounce off of you. So you imagine if that picks up and I don't know, 5% of the world uses a system like that, which I don't think might ever happen, but 1% of 8 billion people, however many it is in the planet now, start using that decentralized VPN, and it exists, and your straw finally gets drawn and they finally crack down on you to the point where you can't take it anymore, and you're finally ready to step outside of that system and become free again, you can start to erase your footsteps with that kind of stuff, and that's going to be very important. I think you see that whenever you have successful people that are being criticized for things they said decades and decades ago, and especially actors and comedians and whatnot. And if we start using some of these systems that people are building right now, getting comfortable with them, because like I said, I believe we're in the revolution. Maybe the war hasn't really started, but we're in the revolution, in the beginning phases, that I will, if I live through it, will hopefully tell my grandchildren, great grandchildren, maybe if I live that long, what this was about and the true history of what we're going through right now, because they're trying to erase the history that we already know, that some of us already know, a lot of us have never taken the time to actually read about. I agree that racism was a very horrible thing. Like I said, that runs deep in my family, but that wasn't me. I had nothing to do with that. And I think it's important that we keep that history alive rather than destroy it. They just took a vault out of a monument somewhere, I think in Richmond, Virginia, I think. And it was a Confederate monument, and I think the statue had already been removed, but there was still a vault that contained documents and whatnot of what that time was like and the battles, and I probably had some, diary entries and stuff from people that existed back then, and it was there, and we knew it was there. Well, they took that out and replaced it with one from 2020, and I have no problem with putting history in there from 2020, but why the hell did you take the history out from 100 years ago so that we can remind people, in my opinion, in 10, 20 more years, that, hey, we actually used to be a free nation. I don't know if you forgot that, but we actually used to be a free nation, and we worked through this thing called segregation and slavery, and the system that was supposed to keep it that way recreated it. And now we're going through it again. And unless we start standing up to it and start doing things about it and stop freaking pointing your fingers at one another and start pointing them at the true issue, we're never going to get anywhere from where we're at right now. It's just going to continue to get worse. And I don't accept that. I'm doing things for me and mine. And that's, in my opinion, where you got to start. But you got to start somewhere. And the time is right now. The time was decades ago. I wish my parents' generation would have seen it and started working on it. But it's time now to start. You know, there's no better time than the present because we can't go backwards. We ain't figured any of that out yet, and I don't know if we need to figure any of that out. But anyways, that's my rant. Welcome to the WaRevolution. I love everybody out there. I am a believer in the greater good of humanity. I believe what I'm talking about is for the greater good of humanity. You may disagree with me on some points, and that's okay. But I'm not inciting violence in anyone. I mentioned guns and bullets are a nice investment. I like to play with them. I think they're a fine tool to use to acquire some of that healthy food from the land that we were meant to consume. But I'm not inciting violence. I'm just telling you to open your eyes and your ears and start seeing what they're putting in front of you, because it's real and it's happening. But anyways, we will see y'all Sunday on another episode of the Church of Liberty. Y'all take care. Have a great one.